I was watching your farewell the other day. I was watching on C-SPAN, and I could imagine for somebody like you, that was probably a day, 22 years ago, you probably thought was never going to come.
Yeah, yeah. Well, nor did I ever think I'd be chairman or chairman in exile, as I say, of the Energy and Commerce Committee. I mean, the odds of that ever timing out and happening pretty slim. And so I'd managed, I don't know, I think we managed 9 different suspension bills on the floor prior to that. So, you're down there doing that sort of thing and then give that speech. And yeah, those are hard sometimes, This it's just amazing how quickly it's passed, though. It's boom, all of a sudden, 22 years, boom, gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I could imagine. And, it's interesting because as a congressman, it's not like being a senator where you run every 6 years. You have to run every 2 years. Are you going to miss that, the rush of campaigning every 2 years?
Well, no, no. I enjoyed it for the most part. I mean, but it's sort of like a third job you have. I always looked at this as sort of have a job that's in Washington, and that's the committee work and meeting with people that come back here. And then you have the job out in the district where you're going around doing meetings and listening in town halls and all of that. And then every other year you got this whole other job of the campaign, and you get all the incoming there, what's the latest attack ad or the direct mail piece or whatever. And it's important, but it is also a real distraction when you're trying to do your other jobs. Oh, and then by the way, you have a family job and a few things. So yeah, I won't miss that. We were pretty fortunate, and I never had an opponent get me under 55%, and most people would die to get to 55% or over, and most of them were up in the upper 60s and all. So, but I never took one for granted and worked hard at it. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I could imagine, I was thinking about this the other day. Somebody was talking about your district. When I got my start in news, I was working in South Dakota, and Congressman Dusty Johnson came on my show quite a few times. And I remember thinking, wow, you have to represent, in South Dakota, it's just one district. It's, this is a huge piece of land, but you're really no exception to that. And when you look at Bend and you go all the way out to a town like Ontario, you're talking about just like two completely different lifestyles, completely different groups of people. What do you think made you successful with reaching people from just such vast differences?
I spent a lot of time on the road, a lot of windshield time over the 22 years. I tried to get to every county at least twice a year. And the major counties, major population centers like Deschutes County or somewhere, it was almost every month, kind of on an average, there in Jackson County and around. And it is a very diverse district. I don't think people realize that, and especially look at the growth in Bend. But that's also seen in Medford, a lot of growth in Medford or Ashland or even Grants Pass. I think you go all the way up to Hood River. You got John Day, or you got Ontario or Enterprise or somewhere. So I just was on the road all the time, and would just get around. It's where you stay in touch. And then I always tried to partner with the local elected officials and other community leaders to figure out what are the issues here, what do we need to work on. I always looked at it as kind of a partnership, regardless of party. So I spent a lot of time with the county commissioners, the state legislators, mayors, to be in a partnership to solve problems. And that also helped keep me plugged in to what people cared about. And I think that, it turns out good policy can be good politics too.
Yeah. So you're talking about a very long career, in Congress. If you had to point to one highlight from your career, what do you think it was? As far as one maybe piece of legislation or something that
I think the work we did on the Healthy Forest Restoration Act really has made a difference. It's not the be all end all. Clearly, there's a lot more work to be done there, but it did empower local citizens to come together in these community wildfire planning groups, work with the counties, work with the Forest Service, and identify areas that needed treatment to provide healthier forests, but moreover safer communities by clearing out the understory and thinning. And a lot of the work you see around Central Oregon may or may not be HIFRA specific, but certainly it gave great guideposts. I think that's important. I think the work we did on opioids really made a difference, and there's more to be done there, but that was a huge undertaking. when I was chairman. And then I think throughout Deschutes County in Central Oregon, worked closely with the irrigation districts to try and pipe the canals, conserve water, make sure we got water for agriculture and fish. And some of that work was really important. But there's just a wide range of issues you get to spend time on in a job like this.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at your career, you were in Congress through 9/11. You're in Congress right now during a pandemic. So I guess my next question would be the exact opposite. What has been the most difficult time frame, I guess, in you sitting office?
Yeah, they're different. Certainly, I was literally on the Capitol grounds when the plane hit the Pentagon. And so being here throughout 9/11, and remember, not long after that, we had the anthrax attack as well, which shut down my office and others in the Longworth building. And coming to grips with this new global threat. We thought we were able to cash a peace dividend. The wall was down. We're getting along, and then the terrorist threat emerged. And so that was a transformational period. And I remember walking through the Capitol the first time that we were allowed back in the building, and literally going through the old House chamber and thinking to myself, those who have gone before have given us something special in America, and there really are entities and groups out there who want to take it away from us violently, and we just witnessed that. And I think it gave me a renewed sense of the importance of the work that we do as members of Congress of both parties to protect our way of life in America. The second, I would go to the pandemic. On the Energy and Commerce Committee, which I chaired, we modernized and reauthorized the Pandemic All Hazard Preparedness Act, PAPA we called it, just in the second year of my chairmanship, and then it didn't get through the Senate, so the following year, under Frank Pallone, the new chairman, we got it into law. We spent years looking at every angle of a hazardous attack or biological, chemical, nuclear, or a pandemic, and thought we had it right. And all the experts, we listened to them. I mean, this is important work. And then it turns out we actually needed a strategic national stockpile that was the Costco for everything you ever wanted. But that's not what it was designed to be. So when suddenly we have a pandemic and you can't get enough face masks and gowns and things, the SNS was never designed to be that supplier of everything to everybody all at once throughout the country, and supply chains broke down. And so we've learned a lot since then about supply chain vulnerabilities. And I think the next Congress needs to double down. We've got legislation we put forward that hasn't moved yet to look at modernizing the strategic stockpile, to reforms in the Pandemic All Hazard Preparedness law going forward. But I would say we rewrote the drug and medical device approval processes at the FDA a few years back. When I was chairman. In fact, it was my bill that modernized the FDA. And I think some of those changes that we did, and it passed unanimously, really showed their value in bringing these vaccines to the public safely but expeditiously. And some of the therapeutics they're working on as well. So I think it's important to tackle these things, and sometimes they're obscure. I doubt there was any press coverage. This is not a criticism, but it's just kind of nuts and bolts work at government on these policies. And then all of a sudden you have this pandemic, and who knew it was going to turn out like this? So anyway, those are probably bookends. With the other bookends, one of my first votes when I got to the House in 1999 was to send the impeachment managers over to the Senate, the Clinton impeachment, and one of the last was dealing with the Trump impeachment. So I never thought I'd be here for any impeachment, let alone two of them. And so, I've seen a lot over the years.
Absolutely. And, Cliff Bentz is now you're passing the baton to Congressman-elect Cliff Bentz. What do you hope to see from him as he carries forward?
He's a terrific legislator. We proved that in Salem for a dozen years. He's a water law attorney. He's a third-generation ranch family out in Eastern Oregon. So he gets our way of life. And there are big issues that continue on, whether it's trying to find a durable and fair solution to the water crisis in the Klamath Basin that can actually become law. I think that'll be one of his biggest challenges. He's uniquely suited to take this to the next step, I think. And then of course, I think there needs to be more work done on post-fire recovery and dealing with the forests that are overstocked still. We've got legislation to do that. It didn't move in this Congress, but hopefully will going forward. It's good for the environment, reduce carbon emissions, plant new forests, clean up after these fires. And so I think that's a big task. And then I think getting America's economy up and running again once we get past the pandemic. I think the vaccine situation is under pretty good control. Operation Warp Speed that the Trump administration initiated has been, I will tell you, a huge success, unprecedented in history, to both speed the approval processes of a vaccine while maintaining safety and ensuring efficacy, but also what Operation Warp Speed really was all about was producing these vaccines before they were ever approved, in anticipation that if one of them was approved, we'd be months ahead. And that's where we are today. And the good news is two of them, and I think FDA will sign off on Moderna very shortly. They've been producing on a brand new platform these vaccines. So that's why we have millions of doses that will be available by the end of the year. Otherwise, you'd probably be, another year before they'd be approved, and then you'd be manufacturing. And so these are good models going forward.
Yeah. So I guess my last question would be, what's next for you? I mean, is that something you've even had time to think about?
Yeah, we've been pretty busy. I would tell you to a certain extent, yes, because I, announced I wasn't going to run back in October of 19. So my wife and I both have Icon ski passes. We intend to use up the slots that are available for Mountain Bachelor, and then spend the rest of January traipsing around the West, getting in 22 years of missed skiing opportunities. So we plan to do that with some friends, and then I'll figure it out. But I've had a great run in the public sector. I've enjoyed it, and it's time for somebody new. And so I'll go back to private sector life. We've sold our radio station, so I guess I won't be working a board shift at a radio station necessarily, but we'll figure out something to do.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me this morning.
Yeah, take care, Blake.